I've been cooking with Dori recently, and now that sounds like omega cringe because Dori isn't a good character by any means. Like, she's pretty bad. But what a surprise! Dori actually works really well with Furina just because she heals a lot. Like, her healing is really good, at least in comparison to Cookie. Also, do note, I'm not talking about C0 Dori, by the way, because C0 Dori is just bad. Like, it's just irredeemably bad. No, I'm talking about C6 Dori. Now, C6 Dori actually makes her decently viable in Furina teams because her C6 allows her to heal a decent amount with her basic attacks. So this 3-second infusion, while isn't really amazing, allows her to heal a decent amount with 4% of her max HP. So she actually becomes a competent healer that has a bit of field time. I guess for the 10 Dori fans out there, you now have a purpose for your Dori, I guess. Now, her other constellations are pretty useless besides C6. I think the most impactful one outside of C6 would be C4. So basically, it allows Dori to gain more energy recharge, which kind of minimizes her ER requirements. So outside of that, I guess C5 would be beneficial for her because it provides more healing to the team. But I think C6 is the only time where her healing is actually viable because this heals the entire party. Depending on your HP build, it equates to roughly 1 prototype Amber proc at R5. So if you can use this twice, that pretty much maxes out your entire HP if you run a Sacred Sword. So yeah, do note again that you need some on-field time with her. The sacrifice isn't really that big if you're running characters that can pair with her on-field time. Who pairs well with her on-field time? Dude, her voice her voice lines are so annoying. Anyway, who pairs well with her on-field time? Well, why don't you have a character like Yae, who doesn't really benefit that much for being on-field for that long, but doesn't have that long of an on-field time where you can quick swap with Dori. So yeah, they actually make a decent pairing. And so now you need a character that applies a lot of Dendro if you want to do like any damage, basically. Next in the team is a character that can apply a lot of Dendro, and the only character that actually does this is Nahida. So Nahida is pretty essential in this team. She applies a ton of continuous Dendro, which is what enables this team to function at any viable capacity. Her Dendro application is so strong that it allows you to continuously retain the Dendro aura on enemies despite Furina applying Hydro. Nahida is pretty much a non-negotiable character in this team, unless you're willing to replace Dori with like a different Anemo healer like Jean. But I mean, I won't do that because this is a Dori video, so... Yes, I know Nahida is a very high priority support for a ton of teams, but just saying that if you choose her to be in this team, the results won't actually be bad at all. It'll actually be very viable. It's not going to be cold. Next is Furina. So she's a character that kind of just makes Dori viable in the first place. Like, Furina is pretty much non-negotiable in this team, so if you don't have her, just don't bother running Dori because it's just not worth it. This team is really expensive, right? This team requires 2 Archons, while having to put both Nahida and Furina in one team is very expensive, and I acknowledge that. And I try to look for cheaper supports, but really they don't run well. Like at best, you could probably try to get away with Dendro Traveler or Kole, but then again, it's not as good. At that point, you'd rather just take out Dori and run like another Nemo character. But yeah, another major reason is you don't really run an Nemo character here because it's very difficult to get swirls from Electro and Hydro when you have Nahida who just applies so much dendro that it eats up the swirls. And so at that point, you're not really swirling anything. And you can still replace Dori with Jean, and it still works really well. Well, it's very difficult to justify running. You're not going to be able to swirl Electro and Hydro. At best, you swirl one of the elements, but it's really hard to swirl both. Especially because Nahida applies so much dendro that it just eats up the entire reaction, so you just don't swirl anything. So that's why I kind of just prefer running Dori. Also because Dori just batteries Yaya a lot better. As for the team, this team's specialty is handling multiple wave chambers, because your big damage number from Yaya's burst comes at the end after healing with Dori and stacking up all your fanfare buffs with Furina. So the ideal scenario is that if you have a heavily invested team, you'll be able to clear the first wave and use your burst at the end once the next wave of enemies spawns. This can be seen in the Abyss showcases that I'll be doing later. Right, wait. I don't know why that guy was not switching. Okay, so Nahida, and Furina. Yeah. Dori. As you can see, Dori's healing, it's not bad. I mean, it's not bad. There are max stacks and I'm done. So that's like really like her healing is enough to pretty much get Furina's buff up. So for my builds, I've relatively invested into my Yaya, so these are pretty good stats. I could actually go for a bit more ER, but that's all I have, really. I'm running the R5 with Sith, 4-piece Gilded Dreams. Yeah, again, I need more ER substats because, yeah, I'm sometimes struggling to get my burst up on time. I'm C0 and my talents are 599. For Dori, I didn't really invest in my Dori at all. I mean, I leveled her up to level 80. I could probably get away with less ER. This ER is pretty much enough to get my burst off of cooldown. Using the Sacrificial Greatsword, running 4-piece Instructors, and you might actually want to get some EM substats just to proc Hyper Bloom. 4-piece Instructors is very important because you want to get as much buffs for your team as possible. C6 is probably necessary. You don't really need to invest in any of her talents. The most important one would probably be her burst, but even then, like, you don't really need to invest in it. Now, Nahida, I didn't really invest much in, besides like having C2. I feel like I need more ER just to burst off a cooldown more often. Now I'm running stack frags, but then I actually do recommend running Prototype Amber because this weapon's actually really good. Especially if you get added healing with this for your Furina. Running 4-piece Steepwood, and that's C2. Now, by no means is C2 necessary. C2 is just a luxury. You can clear this entire Abyss with just C0. It will work perfectly fine. Yeah, just invest a bit in the talents. And for my Furina, yeah, it's just my standard Furina build. It's not super insane. It's just average, I guess. I do feel like this ER is perfectly fine. I don't have any struggle getting my burst up on cooldown. I'm running the Festering Desire and the 4-piece Golden Troop. I'm C0 and I didn't max out my entire talents yet, but this is pretty much all you need. So I have some tips when running Dori in this team. So first is her E only lasts for 3 seconds, meaning that it's sufficient for at most 4 basic attacks. Realistically, she will only be able to proc around 3 basic attacks in this rotation, meaning that if you're using Sac Greatsword, it will proc the C6 passive around 6 times, meaning that you'll get 6 ticks of healing, which is pretty big. Like, it's a relevant amount of healing for your entire party. This doesn't even include her ability to heal with her burst, which is also pretty big at single target scenarios, especially when you build her at full HP. So she heals a lot both with her burst and with her E. Also do note that her basic attacks are very short, so it can be difficult to connect your basic attacks, especially against enemies that are very mobile like the Rift Hounds, or against enemies that can slow your basic attacks like the dancing robot dudes. Second tip is that since Yaya doesn't really proc the Dendro Cores with her skill at all, I mean her burst does, which is good, but then her auto-targeting on her skill doesn't really hit the Dendro Cores. Dori will actually be able to proc a decent amount of Hyper Blooms if you position yourself correctly. If the line that connects you to her burst overlaps with the Dendro Core, it will actually proc the Dendro Core and it will activate Hyper Bloom. That's why you kind of want to build a decent amount of EM on her, or at least get some good EM substats, because EM substats are not going to be wasted at all. So if you don't want to run instructors, you could consider building an EM bonus set or the Lost Paradise set for more hyper boom damage. So yeah, lastly, if you want to get more healing with your Dori, you want to switch your characters around when your burst is up. So her burst actually heals a lot, and it will give you some time when you burst with her, it will heal your entire party to full if you switch to them one by one. And remember, when you're running Yaya, you want to use her burst once you see that Furina's buff is maxed out to get the most amount of damage from her burst. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to share for this team. Unironically, this is a team that I've actually really enjoyed and has one of the best results I've gotten in dealing with content that have multiple waves. So for example, in Chamber 12-2 first half, where there are basically 3 waves of enemies, the sustained damage in this team was able to consistently take out all the enemies per wave, so I don't really have any downtime for damage. Actually, I'm pretty impressed by how Furina can just make healers that were pretty useless before become viable. Like, I'm not really saying that Dori right now is insanely good or anything, and even C6, she isn't really amazing. At best, she's just really niche outside of this team. I might think of making another Dori video, but this time with a different team because I'm kind of like tired of making quick win teams all the time. So I'm thinking of making a Noelle video with Furina, but I haven't really gotten like amazing results yet, so I'll do more testing on that. See ya.